And good evening. Welcome to a special bonus episode episode of Live Irish Myths. I'm Anthony Murphy. We tonight are talking about the program that was just aired on Irish TV station TG4 or TG4 about the possibility of a second or even a third chamber inside Sheon Vrue, Newgrange. Lovely, lovely to see and to hear, should I say, constantly throughout the program, the monument of Newgrange being referred to only in the Irish Sheon Vrue, of course, Middle Irish Sheed in Broga. Fantastic, really exciting. Took loads of notes. The last time we had a live stream immediately after an exciting revelation was the TG4 DNA Culture program hosted by Moncon McGann, which examined the DNA of the bones found in Newgrange and other tombs, which was very exciting at the time. This one is a little bit more personally exciting for me for various reasons that I will go into. No idea how long this is going to take, by the way. I really felt, having seen the press release for tonight's program and the fact that the scientists involved were saying that, yes, there's an anomaly that looks like it might be a collapsed chamber. I really felt that the only thing to do was to hold a live stream and to talk about the program. So before we get to that, I'm not going to say hello to everybody like I usually do, but I will, of course, keep an eye on the comments and I will interact and I will answer questions as I can. I'm not sure how many of you watched the program. I understand that it is now available worldwide on the TG4 player. So if you Google TG4 player and you're looking for Rún na Bóinne, or I'll type it into the comments, or Ufa the N na Bóinne, which means secrets of the Bóinne or secret of the Bóinne. I should start, I think, with and hello to everybody. It's 10:40 p.m. here, which is much later than I would usually begin a live stream. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes later, which means that it's about, 5:40 p.m. in New York, and it is about 8 from 10 is 2:40 p.m. in the afternoon in San Francisco and Seattle. So just to begin with, just want to get the personal connections out of the way. I know the producer, Neal Boyle. Neal and I became acquainted first back in 2009 when I got this ridiculously mad idea to bring Martin Brennan back to Ireland for the first time. He had left Ireland in the early to mid 1980s, hadn't been back in Ireland for 25 years. And he's a man who passed away at the beginning of November, sadly. He did not get to see this program, but I'm sure that wherever he is, he's in the other world. He's in Tirnanog right now, and he's smiling down at the whole thing, because it turns out he was right about so much. And of course, he was a great inspiration for my work. So Neal and I became acquainted then. Neal indeed helped to get Martin here. But when Martin was here, Neal was the one who filmed him using the very best cameras available at the time. So I'm not sure how much, but I'm sure pretty much all of the footage that you saw of Martin Brennan in tonight's program was shot when Brennan was in Ireland in December of 2009. And that was to lead the conference here at Newgrange Lodge. You may have seen he was signing books. That was in Newgrange Lodge. There was a brief image of the back of my head. Brennan was signing books. Well, that was at the Newgrange Lodge after the Bóinne Valley Revision Conference, which was organised in his honour, and which it was my great pleasure and duty, actually, to host. But anyway, the other thing is that I know Kevin Barton, and don't know the Slovakian team at all. I've never met any of those gentlemen. Kevin and I first became acquainted around 2010, 2011, because he had been involved with the Instar report, the Boyne Valley Landscapes project, which had found several undiscovered monuments, including the ones called LP1 and LP2. LP2 low profile 2, which is the henge close to Drone Henge. So yeah, that was all very wonderful, just all emotional actually, to see Martin Brennan talking about there being definitely a passage behind kerb stone 52 at Newgrange. He interpreted the vertical line on that, the vertical band on that stone, to be an indication of a concealed chamber. Now, Professor Michael O'Kelly did, of course, excavate behind that, because he also thought that the artwork indicated there might be a passage. But having excavated several feet or a couple of meters behind it and not found anything, he didn't proceed any further. Anyway, before we get to sort of talking about the data and all of that, there's questions already about, will there be another dig? Please come back to that. Please hold your questions just for now. Come back to that and throw them at me at the end, and I'll do my best to answer the questions. And the very first thing you hear in the program is the phone ringing, and Kevin Barton answers the phone, and Neal Boyle says, "We got the funding," which is brilliant to hear. In other words, we got the funding to do, because that equipment and that team of specialists is, I'm sure, very expensive to hire. They had previously been here, I think it was around 2011, when they used the gravity meter over the current chamber. And that proved that the technology could detect a cavity if that's what it was being used for. However, they hadn't come back, presumably because of expense, etc., etc. And well, I think it looks like Neal organised the funding to get them back, which is fantastic. The scientists in question, forgive me for the, I think it's Roman Pasteka, Pavel Zahorek, and is it Emma Nogova? So apologies if I get those names wrong. So that's where it all started. Well, it all started, of course, with Antiquarian reports about the possibility of a second chamber. Now, there were two very exciting things that I've spoken about before, probably in live streams and in some of my books. First of all is the 1883 report by a Captain Keogh of Tralee, who claimed that he could see a passage leading off the current chamber of Newgrange. You know, the stone that contains the triple spiral, is that chamber stone 10? Don't have my chamber. I don't have a map of the chamber in front of me. And there was that stone was leaning forward, and the other one beside it was leaning forward. And he said that between there he could see a passage leading off. Then there was the other one about Mrs. Hickey, Anne Hickey, who was the caretaker of Newgrange for about 60 years, up until the excavations began in 1962. That at one point, when there were people inside the chamber of Newgrange, she heard a sudden collapse of stones. She heard like a rumbling and a collapse, and she was greatly frightened that something had collapsed in the chamber and that the individuals who were in the chamber were hurt. But she rushed forward through the passage into the chamber and found that everybody was fine. So from that moment, she, we're told, she always believed that there was a yet and as yet undiscovered chamber inside Newgrange. And it was John Clark, the OPW guide at Newgrange, who told us that. John is the chief guide at Newgrange now. So anyway, let me just go through my notes. Yeah, so they talked about the equipment. This microgravity meter, I don't know what you'd call it. I don't know what the equipment is called. Detects a drop in gravity or zero gravity. That's how it registers the data. They only had 9 days to complete the survey, which is pressurizing. You could see it was done in high summer. They're all wearing t-shirts, and it looked lovely, balmy, sunny weather. It certainly wasn't done in the winter anyway. But I think it was Kevin Barton was explaining that, since the 2011 survey, now there was more equipment. So we have the microgravity, and what was the second one? Forgive me. Oh yeah, radar. Murish O'Sullivan, the archaeologist, mentioned the special tales associated with Newgrange. Look, I'm delighted. I am really, really delighted to hear archaeologists talking about astronomical alignments and mythology. This is the stuff I've been writing about for years. It's in Island of the Setting Sun. It's in my Newgrange book. It's in Mythical Ireland. Some of this stuff is in the Bóinne monograph. Delighted, really, to hear the notion that, this idea that they're just tombs. I mean, that's one thing that Brennan wanted to change. They're not just tombs. They're not just burial places. It's all about time, actually, he said in the program. It's about time, was one of the statements that he made. Elizabeth Sheet Tuig, the archaeologist and expert on Irish megalithic art, was interviewed. She was talking about the fact that she had worked on the excavation with O'Kelly, and she said that his principal purpose there was to straighten the orthostats so that people could access the interior of the monument safely. Bob Hickey, who was Anne Hickey's husband, who was the sort of co-caretaker, custodian, if you like, they were the people who lived about a kilometre away from the monument, and you had to call to their house to get the key, and they'd give you candles, and they'd come with you and open the gate and all that. Well, he used to talk about the tale of the sun coming in, but it wasn't known apparently before O'Kelly's time exactly what time of the year the sun might have shone in. They used very interesting GPS uh, equipment that used all possible available systems: American GPS, Russian GPS, Chinese GPS, etc. So they were mapping the precise location of each measurement, each piece of measuring equipment to an accuracy of 1 centimeter, which is extraordinary. The instrument, Kevin Barton told us, is so sensitive that it can see the tide coming in and out. Wow. Yes, O'Kelly understood that we were told Curbstone 52, which is the one diametrically opposite Curbstone 1, on the rear of the monument. So instead of facing in the direction of winter solstice sunrise, it would face in the direction of summer solstice sunset. He knew that it was a special stone, according to Murish O'Sullivan. He made a cutting behind Kerb 52, no sign of a passage, so he went no further. So K52 remained a mystery. And we were told, this is interesting, Newgrange is up to 12 meters deep in places. So at its deepest, the cairn is 12 meters from the top down to the old ground level. The equipment was originally set to a 6 meter depth, and that's when we had an ad break. And then the delight to see Martin Brennan and to hear him. I mean, as I said, he passed away last month. I can't remember what age Martin was when he passed. I have it on. Should be able to find it on the blog, because and by the way, there's an obituary that I'm going to publish on the website in the next 24 hours for Martin. 81. He was 81 years of age. But the delight to see him, to hear that voice of his, that gravelly Brooklyn brogue of his, but he was saying that this is not a one-off thing, i.e., the idea of Newgrange having a precise solar alignment or astronomical alignment, because he said they weren't just solar, they were lunar as well, is not a one-off thing. And of course, Brennan discovered the alignment of Douth's southern chamber, which we saw Cliona Níl in with, what is that man's name? Sean, is it Macansheehy, the presenter? And Nouth, and also, of course, Cairn T at Lough Crew. The footage, as I say, from the Newgrange Lodge and the Boyne Valley revision, and the footage from Newgrange showed Brennan was talking about Curbstone 52, and in that shot was Chris McClintock, who's an author from Northern Ireland, who's written about Freemasonry. And I remember Chris being at the conference, and Chris is a friend of mine as well. So lovely to see that. Brennan had this very distinctive green coat on him that day. So I distinctly remember that was the day of winter solstice at Newgrange, 2009. So they went to Knockrow. Knockrow is in Kilkenny near the border with County Tipperary. That's a very special passage tomb because it has two chambers, one facing aligning with winter solstice sunrise and the other with winter solstice sunsets. Alignments were a key aspect of the design of the monuments. Now, who said that? I don't exactly have it here. Then we were introduced to Frank Prendergast, the archaeoastronomer, and he said he was pointing out that there is symmetry around the axis of the passage of Newgrange. That if you draw a line through that, the monument is sort of symmetrical on either side of it. He was asked by Sean McInshee, if you were looking for another chamber, where would that likely to be? And Frank admitted that that was a big question. And he said, well, maybe winter solstice sunset, a passage aligned towards the southwest, or summer solstice sunset, passage aligned towards the northwest. And then the other one option might be summer sunrise, which would be northeast. And then he talked about halfway between those being equinox. Other sources can steer us towards the location of a possible second chamber. We heard the narrator tell us. And then he talked about the 1883 reference, Captain Keogh of Tralee, able to see this passage leading off the current chamber. And that's where Cleanna Lunnon was brought in, because that is not unprecedented in the Boyne Valley. Doubt's northern passage, which is a cruciform passage like Newgrange, but not nearly as long. I think Doubt North is 8 meters long, has a sort of an antechamber, a little side chamber off the right-hand recess. So, and Cleanna said that feature is a bit strange. We were then told that 4 days into the survey at Newgrange by the Slovakian team with Kevin Barton, the faint outline of something had come up. There were 3 antennas and different frequencies were picking up results down to about 8 or 9 meters, layering from the surface. Isolated stones, possibly. There was fine soil, there was layers, etc. But there was a reflex of the original part of the mound built of stones, much more compact. He did say something very important. I think this was Roman, or maybe it was Kevin. I can't remember. I don't exactly say. All the other things are interpretation. So what we're seeing here is data, and the data has to be interpreted. The data is not conclusive evidence of anything. It's strong evidence, perhaps, of something, but the nature of that, of course, would only be confirmed by digging, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately for very good reason, which we'll go into later. So Geraldine Stout was at Nouth, and she was talking about the gnomon, or the standing stone, the sandstone pillar there at Nouth's western entrance that casts a shadow onto the entrance stone at equinox. And I think the purpose there was they were at Nouth to look at the vertical line on the entrance stones outside the 2 passages there. Brennan was filmed at Newgrange in 2009, which was I think that was the 21st. That was the day, the official day of solstice. All the crowds at Newgrange and all the TV cameras. But I think the conference had been the day before, the Boyne Valley revision down at the Newgrange Lodge. But he was filmed at Newgrange, and he was saying there, and you can see him on camera saying there's no doubt that there's a passage in there. In his mind, there was absolutely no doubt about it. So the question was asked, why didn't O'Kelly's excavations find anything behind Kerb 52? And I think the short answer to that from Murish O'Sullivan was that, well, he didn't dig very far in, Anyway, the microgravity survey was then spoken about, that might, if this equipment, the microgravity equipment, had the capability to pick up a cavity or a chamber. And we're back to Brennan again, because he said the art is a reflection of time and space, which I really liked. The megalithic art of Newgrange and the other passage mounds of Neolithic Ireland were a reflection of time and space. So we heard about Lower Moor Lacon, and the question was asked, does folklore contain a reference to the function of the monuments? A question I've been asking for years and investigating for years, writing books about, writing blog posts about, hosting live streams about. It's on the record, folks. I've been asking it for years and years and years, and I've been answering it in a way. But anyway, Billy McGlynn said that there are echoes of something more ancient in the stories. He talked about how the stories reflected the era in which they were written down, but he did say there were echoes of something more ancient. And then we heard about the idea of the control of the sun, things like that, controlling the sun and time. And of course, it was John. I can't remember his name. It's so stupid because John Carey, who I've quoted in several of my books, who said that he can't find any other monuments where the major themes of the myth are the control of time. So Christina Cleary was interviewed. She was talking about Tuchmark Ethane. I call it Tuchmark Ethane. She had a different pronunciation. And she was talking about Dogda chasing after another man's wife, who's Bóinne, who's married to Elgvar. And all this takes place at Bóinne. And it was interesting. She talked about the She people, the Tuatha Dé Danann, who were enjoying their lives in the monuments. In other words, in the mythology, the monuments aren't described as passage tombs or graves or places of death. They're actually described more as places of living, places that are very much alive. The mansion, Brú, the mansion of the Bóinne, the mansion where the gods are allegedly feasting. But these were the elite of the supernatural beings. The elite of the Tuatha Dé Danann, which led into the DNA evidence of Dr. Lara Cassidy talking about, the individual at Newgrange who had a 6th degree relative in Sligo. And that was fascinating because Sligo and Newgrange are at least 100 kilometers apart. Of course, the main finding of that, which was the discussion we had a few years ago in 2020, and DNA culture and all that, was the fact that this man buried in Newgrange had 1st degree incestuous parentage. His parents were probably brother and sister, if not father and daughter, or mother and son, which was fascinating. Then we went to Carol Moore and Carol Keel, and Robert Hensey, the archaeologist, was interviewed. And he said, yeah, there were hints of alignments at some of the monuments there, but he talked about how there was a progression. So in Sligo, there's a tendency towards shorter passages and chambers, meaning that the alignment is cruder, it's broader, it's wider. But when you go to the Bóinne, there's a development. There's longer, narrower passages which point more precisely at a place on the horizon. So the alignments eventually become more precise as the passages get longer, is what I've written here. Now, this isn't necessarily accurate notes of everything. It's the best I could write down at the time. Yeah. And Cairntee, and the illumination of the rear stone of Cairntee and the sun wheels, the sun symbols on that, which is what we think they are. Nobody can be sure what megalithic art means, but that's what we think they might mean. She said, and Elizabeth Sheatuig would not be known as somebody who interprets megalithic art. She has recorded pretty much everything there is in Ireland and in many parts of Europe, but she doesn't get into interpretation. But she said that is something that she would go along with. She said it's a bit of a thing, that Cairntee thing. And that was when Brennan was quoted as saying it's about time, that the art in combination with the monuments and the alignments. So then we heard Sean Mackensheep on the phone pulling in at the side of the road, and he was being told that a weak anomaly had been picked up at Newgrange, but they didn't think it was a chamber. A faint anomaly in the radar survey. And Roman, who I think was the leader of the Slovakian geophysics team, Roman Pasteka, I think he seemed to have been their spokesperson. And he said he was not convinced. And he said, we need more data. For now, it's about... for now, I can't read my own writing because I was scribbling so feverishly and so ferociously. For now, it's not so perfect, is what he said. That was when we had a second ad break. Then we had Cliona Nilionon at Douth Hall talking about the discovery of the passage tomb under that house, revealed in 2018. She also mentioned the drone discoveries at Newgrange in that year, at Dronehenge, and we weren't mentioned by name, but of course myself and Ken Williams were the discoverers there. Far from Geraldine Stout was quoted, and this is interesting. She said, Far from dying down after the great passage tombs have been built, she said there are even greater celebrations, evidence of huge amounts of people coming into Bóinne because of these vast amphitheatre-like monuments, the henges. So the results came in then, and they said the strongest lead was for a possible second chamber at Newgrange was behind Curbstone 52. The data was showing something that had a symmetrical shape. The radar and the gravity both detected something, and they both agreed on the location of it. Roman was quoted as it could be saying, sorry, was quoted as saying it could be a collapsed cavity, 10 to 11 meters between the collapsed features, and they were both about 4 meters in diameter, if I gathered that bit right. They were both about 4 meters in diameter. One of them was a bit smaller than the other, and they were spaced apart by about 10 or 11 meters. And then the data was showing steep edges and a shallow source. But the main thing was that the gravity and the radar results corresponded. These signatures showed what the team considered might be a collapsed chamber. And that corresponded with Mrs. Hickey's story, her retelling of the noise of collapsing stones in Newgrange, which she thought was a collapse taking place in the known chamber. But when she went in there, she found no, everything was as it had been. So it was something else. Somewhere in the interior of the monument, she had heard the noise of something else collapsing. So all very tantalizing. Delighted for Neal Boyle. Delighted that he finally got to use the footage that he recorded 14 years ago now. 14 years ago today and tomorrow. That footage of Martin Brennan. And I'm sure, as I say, Brennan is smiling down on us all tonight with glee and delight. And look, it's great to see him getting recognition. He was a maverick, and he, by his own admission, at times he was a bit of a loose cannon. But he later said, I've seen an interview, that a long interview with him in which he said the war was over between him and his research team and the archaeologists. They were on the same page now. They weren't, at the time he and his crew weren't part of the institution, as it were. They weren't part of they weren't academia. They weren't part of the archaeological establishment in Ireland. And of course, the fact that some of them were American, and Brennan in particular, could probably have been a bit brash at times. He was reportedly said at, I think it was Geraldine Stout quoted him at an event in the Bóinne Valley where he asked the archaeologists, and pardon my language, but I'm just quoting, what does a fucking bone mean? Because he just felt that this whole focus of the archaeologists on the idea of tombs didn't encompass the full breadth of what those monuments were about. So I almost had a tear in my eye watching it. Emotional, delighted now, really, really, really delighted in the fullness of time to have made all that effort back in 2009. And I can tell you, it was a stressful thing getting Martin Brennan to Ireland. Martin Brennan never owned a computer, never owned a cell phone, didn't have a landline, didn't even use a typewriter. He hand wrote everything. He was notoriously difficult to contact. He lived in Mexico, very difficult to contact. I had the delight of a Skype call with him in 2014 on the 5th anniversary of the conference, and I had Jack Roberts sitting here with me, and we also patched Toby Hall in on the call. And I want to make special recognition of Toby and Jack, because I think Neal would say it, that none of what we saw tonight would have been possible without the help of those, especially Toby, who was enormously helpful in getting Martin here, and Jack, was part of the team, was with Brennan at Doubt South when they made that winter solstice sunset discovery. By the way, the OPW is opening that passage tomorrow for the first time since before the pandemic. I imagine it's going to be absolutely thronged with people. Weather forecast's not great. And he was also with Brennan at Cairntee in Loughcrew when they discovered the equinox alignment there. So extraordinary stuff. Emotional for me, I say, delighted for Neal. He's obviously invested a huge amount of his passion and his energy and his money into making that program and making that happen. Neal tells me that Martin Brennan started his fascination with Newgrange and the monuments. So we all, I think, owe a debt of gratitude to the late Martin Brennan, the late great Martin Brennan. As I say, I'm hoping to publish an obituary on the website in the next day or two. I don't think I'll get round to it tonight. I'm off to Newgrange early in the morning. I have 2 tours of Fornox tomorrow, and I'm probably going to go to Douth in the afternoon. So I have a busy day ahead tomorrow, so I better get to bed at some stage. Anyway, I am going to now look at comments and questions. I'm not sure how many of you got a chance to see it. If you didn't, it's available on the player. Apparently, I'm told, I read it in the press release earlier, that once the program was finished, it would be available to view worldwide. In other words, you shouldn't have any problem with, if you're in the States or Canada or in the UK or in Australia or in South Africa or wherever. So as sometimes you do when you're watching something from a foreign country, you get, this content is not viewable in your jurisdiction. How many have we got watching? 91. Oh, wow. Now, let me just have a look. Danu says, interesting to think that there may be cavities or chambers, but no evidence of passages to connect them so far. Or did I miss something? Yeah, you're right. It's not that there's no evidence. It's just that what my understanding of what was in the data was that it's compressed and it's flat. It's like whatever's there is maybe collapsed, under the weight of the cairn. Yeah. None of this is conclusive, by the way. I was late to the program. What years were those alignments discovered? 1980, Blahin. So I'll be on the RTE player, not the RTE player, Mandy, the TG Cahar player, the TG4 player. Lina George, when I was at Newgrange in August, the guide mentioned how there'd recently been a crew climbing all over and filming and taking LiDAR readings, and that they didn't know what the findings were yet. So this is exciting. Yeah. They kept a very good lid on the findings of that survey because nobody knew. I mean, I'm telling you, nobody knew. I know a lot of archaeologists and none of them knew because some of them were asking me, did you hear whether, was there anything discovered? Thank heavens, or we archaeologists would have nothing to do. Lexi says, always seem to need more data. Look, very important point here. The data is no substitute for a dig. It just isn't. We have the same thing at Millmount, where we have what is being described as a jumble of stones deep in the center of the bottom of the mound, which could be a collapsed chamber of some sorts. But we're never going to know that for sure. I've always said, regardless of digging, right, I've always suggested that I think we're going to come into an era where micro robots, I'm serious about this, where nanotechnology is going to be able to do this for us, where tiny little robotic diggers that are no bigger than your little finger nail or even smaller are going to be able to dig or crawl their way in through monuments and to image and to maybe collect tiny samples and to bring them back to us as a substitute for large scale digging. There is no substitute for a dig. And even though that program ended on a high note and a positive note, all we're looking at is data which indicates the possibility, the probability of something, but the nature of that something is very difficult to tell. And we have to remember too that there's evidence. Well, it's not there's evidence. I think it's overwhelming that Knowth was extended. The large monument at Knowth was once a lot smaller and was later extended. We may have the same thing at Newgrange. Who knows? Adele, I remember when we walked around Newgrange, you mentioned the hypothesis of another chamber or entrance. Was that 2017? It would have been around then. Is it that long ago already? Time flies. Yes. And of course, on all my tours, I talk about that. O'Kelly found a turf mound under a small turf mound. So it's interesting that, if only he'd gone a few meters further in, what he might have found, But like that, Newgrange and Bóinne holds on to certain things and reveals them when it wants to reveal them, There is an app that you can download, says Wayne. Yeah, but I think TG4 player, it's tg4.ie. And if you just go to their player, and Rune na Bóinne is there. Yeah, I'll just share that link as a comment. I just want to try and get through some of the comments and questions because I know that people are excited like I am. Nano archaeology, says Saoirse. Yeah, nano archaeology. Yes, indeed. Also lovely to see so many of the participants in the program speaking fluent Irish, Saoirse. Unfortunately, I don't have fluent Irish. Has the DNA been released, published? Yes, it has in 2020. Can we compare our DNA with that of the people found in the mounds? That's a question I can't answer, Mary. But the paper was published in Nature, the journal Nature, in 2020. I've several blog posts and YouTube videos about it if you want to look at those. Samantha Healy says, as I said earlier, we need good old-fashioned observation. Joan McHugh, is there absolutely no chance of chamber or passage at all, say, between Kerb 52 and the known famous? I don't think they looked there, funnily enough. I think they concentrated their effort where they thought of the most likely possibility. There's discussion about, and Ken Williams, I was talking to Ken about this recently, there is discussion about, it's Curbstone 13, I think, that there's hidden art behind at Newgrange. That there may be a passage behind that because there's hidden art on the back of a stone there. Now, O'Kelly again found no evidence for a passage there. We can't say that there's definitely not, I don't think, because although the front of the cairn was excavated and that concrete wall put in, a substantial part of the cairn was left unexcavated. So it's still, I mean, we can't say there's no chance. Certainly there is a chance. But I don't think the Slovakian team imaged that part of the monument. I watched some of it on the player, says Mariana. Fascinating. I agree with you on that. Just checking. Blahin, sorry, I answered that already. I've seen repeat comments as usual. I'm scrolling up and I seem to be seeing comments I saw already. There's Adele Perth. Danu Forrest was saying time, space, and the other word. Yeah. Time, space, and the Bóinne necropolis or something. I have it quoted in my bibliographies in several of my books. Great summary of the program, says Hogan McGee. Hello, Hogan. Happy solstice to you. Thank you. Really interesting program too. Tantalizing results. Really exciting possibilities. Come here. At least, if nothing else, it gives us something to talk about. I mean, I'll be hopefully bringing lots of groups to Newgrange next year, and it's something we'll be able to say to add into the whole story of Newgrange now. Is that O'Kelly dug behind here and found nothing but a recent investigation in 2022. I think that survey was done. Has revealed the possibility of, brilliant. So everybody's saying RTE4. It's not RTE4, it's TG4, TGKR. I've shared the link, so hopefully everybody will get that. Wendy says, thanks so much for this review. You're very welcome, Wendy. I'm not sure if you saw the program. Really exciting stuff. Interesting. And as I say, there's no substitute for digging. Somebody asked earlier, and I do want to get back to that question, which was asked very early on. Let me just find it here if I can. Mandy McCurl is watching from Balahi. Hello, Mandy. Good evening to you. Joe Butler, Auntie Joe is here. How nice to have another live stream. I know, right? Gemma is saying that Anthony is keeping us awake. Alarm set for 5 a.m. Wow. Yes, I'm hoping to live stream from Newgrange in the morning, but there's a possibility I look at the weather in the morning and just go, I'm not going, because it's going to be thronged. There's going to be 1,000 people there tomorrow, probably. Adina Sparks is here. Alwyn Roy Badziak thought it was a great program. Burr Whelan says, you're a peculiar episode, lol. Glenda is saying, hello, Anthony, from North Carolina. Not North, I was going to say North Columbia, North Carolina, New Caledonia. She's in Canada. Where was the comment or the question? Alan Hoskins is saying, just got home, wild night out there. Have recorded TG Cahar program, but we'll watch this first. Brilliant stuff. Hope I haven't spoiled it for you now, Alan, but I think you'll enjoy it all the same. Paul Goran was saying hello to everybody gathered. I'll see you in the morning, Paul. Claire Wood did some dowsing, but I believe there's a whole complex below. Interesting. Maybe we should have got the dowsers in. It probably would have cost less. I'm sort of half joking, half serious, you know. Some of the program is in Irish, says Mariana. Yeah, but it was subtitled, so it should be okay. Porrick Byrne. Yes. Do you think this is the question? Do you think we will see another excavation of the mound at Newgrange? It's very difficult. I don't think so. We really have moved completely away from digging, especially when we're digging these large, precious. I mean, let's just consider something here. There are somewhere between 250 and 300 known passage tombs in Ireland. That's not many. A lot of them are wrecked. A lot of the stones are carried away. They're damaged. They're denuded. You know, the gigantic ones of Bóinne, there are three of those. They are not just precious, unique, you could say, to the Irish record. They're unique in the world, really. So, you know, when you excavate, you damage, you destroy stratigraphy. You can never put things back the way you found them. So I don't think there is any great appetite among the National Monument Service, UNESCO, OPW would have an involvement for digging. I really don't. Having said that, of course, there was the passage tomb found under Douth Hall in 2017, 2018, but the license there, you know, I mean, they weren't looking for a passage tomb; they just happened to find one. You know, I don't know is the honest answer. I know loads of archaeologists would love to get that opportunity. Of course, they'd be queuing up for it. Actually, yes, we'd love to do even a limited excavation at Newgrange. You know, dig down where those two anomalies are. Dig two very small trenches. But yeah, and then what if you do find evidence of large stones with megalithic art on them and evidence of a collapsed chain? You'd want to extend that further, you know. So I believe right now that there's no appetite, and I don't believe there will be for a long time. In fact, I'm going to make a bit of a prediction here. I don't think I'm going to see any large scale, any more significant excavation of Newgrange or Douth in my lifetime. I would have added Nouth, but Nouth was completely excavated by Professor Ogan and his team over 40 years. So there, you know, there's nothing left to excavate at Nouth. I don't think in my lifetime, will see significant excavation at either Newgrange or Douth. And I'm not even sure whether I'd be happy to be proved wrong on that. It's just excavation is invasive, you know. I'm hoping that we develop the technology, and that's why O'Kelly didn't excavate significant portions of Newgrange, because he knew that archaeology was an evolving and advancing science. All the time, new equipment, new methods were becoming available, and he knew that in the future there'd be better, I suppose, better equipment and methods available to. And he was right, because we've got the DNA, we've got the remote sensing, we've got you know, all this data which is apparently showing the possibility of collapsed double chamber in there somewhere. You know, an excavation would be an exercise of the century, says Samantha Healy, and you're absolutely right, Samantha, 100% right. An excavation would be desirable in so many ways, and yet undesirable in so many others. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah. See, this isn't just a matter for National Monuments Service. This is a matter for UNESCO as well. I mean, they're very stringent about the conditions attached to having World Heritage status, and rightly so. You cannot put a spade in the ground, as Geraldine Stout said. I think it was Geraldine, or was it Murish? I think it was Geraldine. You can't put a spade in the ground anywhere in the Bóinne Valley without finding anything, which is why if you're in a UNESCO World Heritage site and you want to, for instance, build something in your garden that requires you to dig foundations, you have to have an archaeological license. You have to get an archaeology done, you know. Thank you, Eamon Keenan. Glad that you're enjoying the live stream, and I hope you watch the program, because it really is fascinating. Now, here's a question from Aftfada Fadfada. Interesting handle, which I can't pronounce. Could you explain, Anthony, what are legal / or other conditions that would have to be overcome for further to dig? So I believe I've kind of largely answered that. I think that National Monument Service would have to, of course, grant a license, and I think they would be extremely reluctant to do so. Not speaking on their behalf. Mythical Ireland, as you know, is an independent entity. I'm a completely independent person, not attached to any institution, any body, any archaeological institution or otherwise, any government institute. I have my own views on things, but my strong belief would be that there would be little or no appetite for another dig at Newgrange. And that's not even considering taking into account UNESCO. So what would be required is, first of all, for an institution, probably the likes of University College Dublin or University College Cork, an institution with significant, or the Royal Irish Academy would fund some of that, an institution with significant gravitas in the archaeological sphere. And probably the person or people who would undertake a dig at Newgrange would be the most experienced of the archaeologists. O'Kelly was the most experienced archaeologist of his era when he began excavations at Newgrange in 1962. They would have to apply for a license, and they'd have to give very strong grounds for applying for a dig. They would have to come up with the funding. As I say, Royal Irish Academy might provide some of that. Their own institution might find some of that funding. And then there's I believe the UNESCO thing, that they would have to be conferred with as well. I don't see it happening, honestly. But if it does, it does. And maybe somebody will make a very, very convincing case for another dig at Newgrange. But I really don't see it happening. What I see happening is an advancement of the techniques. So since the 2011 survey, which only surveyed, I see the muck from Newgrange on my sleeve from this morning. So since the 2011 survey, which only looked at the existing chamber to see if the equipment could detect a cavity, we had the addition of, more equipment and technology. So even in that time span, we've got better equipment now than we had in 2011, which suggests in another decade or so, we're going to have better equipment and better data, or better the possibility or the ability to collect better, more accurate, stronger data. I believe actually we will get to a stage where we will literally be able to look inside like a CAT scan, or which is the more accurate, a CAT scan, or what's the other one, where they MRI. Not sure which of those is more detailed or more accurate, but that kind of idea where we'll have equipment attached to the outside of Newgrange or another cairn, and will literally be able to show us exactly what's under there. We'll get to that stage, I think, eventually. At the moment, it's a bit crude. It's fascinating all the same. Fascinating that we know there might be something there, we can't go down and have a look. We literally can't. Yes. Paul Campbell is in the house. I think TG4 is a great Irish language television station with many programs subtitled in English. Yeah, it is. It's brilliant. They've always made great documentaries. Always. Long history of it. Fantastic. Daisy Peters is in the house. Hello, Daisy. Don't worry about being late. Absolutely no worries. Stephen Heaney. Hello, Stephen. Kerem Gogus is here. Hello, brother Anthony at Mythical Ireland. Hello, Kerem. Happy solstice to you. So much has moved on. Oh yeah, I think we read that, Samantha, maybe earlier in archaeology, but data is essential. Good old-fashioned observation and experience. Yes, indeed. Very exciting documentary, says Fergal Canton. I should also point out that Kevin Barton was involved in the Mars project, Millmount Archaeological Remote Sensing. And I've written some blog posts about that, and I'm very grateful to Drogheda community historian Brendan Matthews, because he was the one who tried to, as it were, get information about what had been found in that survey, that jumble of stones, that mysterious jumble of stones beneath the mound of Millmount that could possibly, just possibly, be the remains of a Stone Age passage tomb, which is something that's hinted at in the folklore and the annals. Theresa Collins is delighted to find us here this evening. Happy solstice to you all, and many happy returns. Such a great subject to be discussing this evening. It's fascinating, isn't it? T. Martino says, happy solstice, many happy returns to you. Deirdre Orm is watching. Hello, Deirdre. Who else? Sotonar is in the house. Good evening to you, Sotonar. I heard that before back in 2007, says Kerem. A friend of mine said to me, Newgrange is just a tomb when I mentioned it. We're not friends anymore since then. Yeah, you should have just said, look, here's the evidence that it's more than a tomb, and given him some of my books. Debbie Sheehy, so good to hear this, especially the mythology we mentioned. Yeah, the combination of archaeology, astronomy, and mythology. Stars, stones, and stories. What myself and Richard Moore have been saying for 24 years. Saoirse says, astroarchaeology is splendid, but I think I'll start a new discipline of gastroarchaeology. Yum. At least I hope it's yummy. What are you talking about? Making cakes in the shape of Newgrange, making a loaf of bread in the shape of a cairn tea or something. Yeah, sounds fascinating. Dr. White says 12 meters. That's fascinating. Wayne Bird, if I hadn't said hello to you already, hello. Samantha was giving me Martin's age when I was thinking about it earlier. Hello, and thanks for that, Samantha. Robin Bartolomo says, it has always been about the stars and the position of the monuments. It is the perfect position between light and dark, the ending and the beginning of each year. It is the perfect alignment position, so peaceful and beautiful. And if you've been to Newgrange and you've been in Newgrange for solstice, I can tell you, yes, it is. It's so peaceful and it's so beautiful. It's lovely. There's a huge emotional effect on people. And there's all sorts of questions about the religion and the spirituality, the transcendent stuff. And even Frank Prendergast said it, he said, how could you have a culture that didn't regard the sky or didn't honor the sky in some way? I agree with him wholeheartedly. Sandra Boothroyd says, nice surprise. If I'm repeating some comments, forgive me. There are so many, which is wonderful to see. And it's so lovely to have you all here. Especially I'm seeing names that we don't normally see on Mondays. So maybe that's a hint. Anthony, do some more live streams other than on Mondays. And you'll get more viewers. Let me just scroll down now to the end to see what has come in the last few minutes. Joan says, I personally feel this is an itch that needs to be scratched, but whether that happens in my lifetime, I reckon I will be waiting a very long time, but I would love to know, or a long, long time. Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, of course, I'd love to scratch that itch, but I also, I want my grandchildren to be able to go to Newgrange and Nouth and Douth and Fornox and Loughcrew and Carrowkeel and Carramore and all the others, and to enjoy them as much as I have done. And I'm very, very conscious of that what I do or don't do in my lifetime is very important. Blahin, Star Stones, Stories, and Situation. Yes, 4 S's, not just 3. Gastroastronomy, says Alan. What a great idea. Could open the Cairn Tea and Cake Shop. Yeah, tea and cake. Oh, I like it. Oh, yes, yes. North County Moocher says, if the original digs were only focused on them being tombs, then once the bones and tombs, they probably stopped really looking. The evidence of alignments requires re-examination. Yeah, well, I think in fairness to O'Kelly, he did listen to what people were saying about the alignment, and he did try to figure it out, and he did find evidence of it. But yeah, I think archaeology in general, Neolithic archaeology in Ireland, needs to place more emphasis on astronomy because there's more astronomy there than they I suppose, would give credit to. Mary Shield says there's laser technology available now. I've always believed that there must be another tunnel or access into the monument. Let's hope we can find out without digging out the evidence. Yeah. And the unusual thing about Newgrange is, if you think about Nouth and you think about Douth, Nouth has 2 passages and 2 chambers. The passages lead into the chambers, of course. Douth has 2 that we know of. Douth is another mystery. There could be further passages and chambers in Douth. There's a significant portion of that monument that lies undisturbed. So that's another one that could hold on to its secrets. But anyway, Newgrange is unusual. It's the only one of the 3 that doesn't have, it's the only one that only has 1 passage. The others have 2. And the other thing about Newgrange is, as far as we know, it doesn't have any souterrains. It wasn't interfered with in the early medieval period when souterrains were built into Douth and Nouth. So that's fascinating too. Archaeoastronomy database is in the house. Hello, Ty. So excited. So excited. Can't wait to take a look at some of the imaging results in overlay. I look forward to seeing that. How far into the monument does the passage go? It's not halfway, actually. And if you just Google search Newgrange ground plan, you'll see that it only goes in about 1/3 of the way. Fascinating. If you're just looking for a tomb and find one, the bones, then the excavation stops, really. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think O'Kelly was just looking for a tomb. But what's fascinating about tonight is we're hearing a program about archaeology talking to people who are saying, well, what's in the mythology about these monuments? And the mythology, surprisingly, isn't really about death. You know, I loved that. I loved that. Uh, I wonder, should I be so bold, so egotistical as to suggest that some of these people maybe have been reading some of my books? Maybe not. But, be nice. What's 80 meters, Paul? That is the overall diameter of Newgrange. Actually, about 85 meters, I think, the overall diameter. 80 feet, perhaps, since a 40-meter diameter mount. No, it's 80 meters in diameter. The passage is 19 meters, and the chamber then is another 5 or something like that. You see, I get confused because there's different quotes. There's feet and meters, and I'm still sort of a bit of an old-fashioned dude. I like miles. I still talk in terms of miles. I have never been able to get used to kilometers. Exactly, Anthony. Only 1/3. It's a huge area. There has to be more, much more. You'd imagine so, because the two passages of Knowth almost meet back to back. There's only a few meters between them in the centre of that monument. But then when you look at Douth, the chambers, the passages there don't extend very far. They're only a tiny way into the cairn. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. We can't get into the minds of the people who built these monuments. We can't figure out exactly why they did certain things, Passage length quoted as 80 feet, I believe. Yeah. I think that's the combined length of passage and chamber, I think. Definitely aligned to stars, asteroids, and deep myths. I'm not sure about asteroids, Siobhan, because they move, but I mean, yes, planets. Venus, the morning star shining into Newgrange, as recorded by Joseph Campbell, no less. Hey, if they ever want more archaeoastronomy done, says Archaeoastronomy Database, I know an interested party for hire, very low price. Smiley face. Asking for a friend, yeah. Yes. Anyway, I think we might be caught up. Sotonar says thinking Bóinne is just a tomb is like trying to call the pyramids just a tomb. They're all so much more. Yeah, there's been a focus on cult of the dead, city of the dead, necropolis. Yes, of course, they're burial places. Look, don't forget something. Doan O'Neill passage, the passage tomb that we know as the Mount of the Hostages of Tara, has a very short passage. It doesn't even open into a chamber. It's undifferentiated. There were hundreds, between 200 people. 200 and 300 people, the fragmented remains of them stuffed into that. So that's not the sort of monument you just walk into and go, hey, I'm going to have some celebrations in here, watch the sunrise. No, it was stuffed with burials. Fornox was blocked because the passage of Fornox was blocked up with burials. So they're not the sort of monuments after a while that you just walk into and celebrate. Newgrange seems to be different. I think Newgrange, yeah, I think the idea was that you were to go in there and watch this amazing sunrise event in the company of your ancestors, the dead ancestors who are around you. But you see, the mythology would suggest that these are living spaces. So the dead are dead, but they're living, as it were. Spiritually, they're alive. They've been brought to life in another realm, I think, Right. I think that's it. Paul Gowan wants to talk about the megalithic yard. I think it's another night's subject, Paul. But I'll see you tomorrow. And Brennan did suggest that the monuments in the Bóinne Valley revision, the Bóinne Valley Vision, which was his first book, he did suggest that the mounds were built on a scale. But I think he later came to not quite reject that, but I think he came to realize. I think the greatest difference, he says in this interview that I've seen, the greatest difference between the Bóinne Valley I keep calling it revision. That was the name of the conference I organised to bring him back. The main difference between the Bóinne Valley Vision and the Stars and the Stones, later republished as the Stones of Time. The main difference between them was that Bóinne Valley Vision was very hypothetical and very theoretical, not based on observation. And he was told by an archaeologist, it might have been O'Kelly actually. He had conversations with O'Kelly. He was told, "Where's the data? Where's the observations? Where's the proof to back all this up?" And that's when he got his team together and said, "Let's go and make these observations." So the second book was much more convincing because it was based on raw observations and photography. That is so powerful, says Alwyn. I'm not sure what you're talking about now, because as usual, you're talking about something that I mentioned a few minutes ago, and I'm not able to connect the two things. But thank you, Alwyn, all the same, and I'm sorry. O'Kelly's excavation of Newgrange took the complex apart molecule by molecule. There's certainly only one passage in Newgrange, says Paul. Well, he didn't excavate the part of the monument that this team was looking at. So he didn't take the whole thing apart molecule by molecule, Paul. He actually didn't. He really didn't. The parts that he excavated were excavated expertly and carefully, and everything was very carefully recorded, despite what you might see on social media at this time of year about Newgrange being a fake and all that rubbish. So no, this idea that there's certainly only one passage, nobody is able to say that with any certainty. Tom King, I didn't even know you were there. Are you out at the forge? Good to see you this morning at Newgrange. Good crack, even though it was totally cloudy. Fascinating. Thank you, Anthony. Good evening, all. Bóinne Valley sends many blessings this solstice celebration. Catch up in the morning. Looking forward to seeing you then. Thanks, Porrick. And good night. Siobhan, I believe Karnak and Brittany must also be connected too. Well, yeah, I think the closest cognates of the passage wombs of Bóinne are the monuments, the similar monuments in northwestern France. The imperial yard was somehow decided to be the distance between the king's nose and his middle finger. Yeah, but held out at arm's length, I presume. Something like that. I'll send you a photo, says Paul. Okay, do that. Lily Shambles, sad I missed this. Well, the great thing is, as soon as I stop, it'll be available to rewatch on YouTube and on Facebook. So there you go. Alwyn says the presence of the ancestors. Ah, yes. So powerful. Yeah, indeed. Now I know what you're talking about. Latricia Bergfeld is watching from Indiana, USA. Good evening. Good afternoon to you, Latricia. Actually, what time is it? It's 20 to midnight now. I better stop talking and go, because I have to get up really early in the morning and go to Newgrange to meet Tom King and hundreds of others. Similar discussion on Monday. Wombs, tombs, light and dark, birth and death. Yeah. If you missed it, the previous episode of Live Irish Myths, which was number 256, was about Newgrange, and you might be interested in rewatching that. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing some of you at the Fornox tours in the morning. Hopefully it won't be too windy. Forecast is for very strong winds. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget the 7 p.m. where Latricia is. Yeah, so you're on the East Coast. Yeah, don't forget, if you want to rewatch this, as soon as I finish, it'll be available to rewatch on both Facebook and YouTube. Alison Coogan wishes a blessed solstice to all, and a blessed solstice to you also, Alison. Thank you for joining in. And yeah, don't forget to watch the rewatch Rún na Bóinne on the TG4 player, apparently available worldwide at the link I'm just sharing there now. Anyway, hopefully get to do a bit of a live stream from Newgrange in the morning for those of you who are around. I know it's not really that suitable for the US viewers, because if I live stream, say, at 9 a.m., that's 4 a.m. in New York. However, it's 1 a.m. in San Francisco, and Seattle and Los Angeles, or Oregon. So I expect some of you might stay up, on the off chance. Carmel O'Dwyer, getting ready for my annual pilgrimage to Newgrange. So lovely to catch this. Thanks, Anthony. See you in the morning, Carmel. Good fun. It doesn't look like we're going to have sun, but sure, anyway, that's the way it goes. This is Ireland after all. Anyway, congratulations, Neal Boyle, TG4, Rún na Bóinne. Wonderful program, and wonderful memories for me in that too, also of Martin Brennan. So delighted, proud actually that I brought the man back to Ireland, because I feel that his reputation was restored somewhat by that, and there was peace broke out between him and the archaeologists, which was great to witness. So we'll see you all next week for Live Irish Myths. I'm not sure what this topic will be. We might get back to P.W. Joyce, but we might pick another subject just to have another bit of a break. Don't forget, on St. Stephen's Day at 8 p.m. Irish time, that's 3 p.m. Eastern, that's 12 noon Pacific, the premiere of the video that was recorded at the live podcast conversation I had with Moncon McGann at the Samhain Festival in Clonakilty. That's samhainfestival.ie, by the way, if you want to look up more about that. That is premiering on YouTube in, 6 days' time, the day after Christmas Day, St. Stephen's Day, or if you're in the UK, you call it Boxing Day, 8 p.m. Irish time. That is premiering. I'll be there in the comments chatting with anybody who's there when it premieres. I believe you'll enjoy it. Myself and Moncon had a lovely, lovely conversation. It goes on for about an hour and 10 minutes, I think. We could easily have spoken for several hours. And it was a packed house in Debarras in Clonakilty, which was lovely. And such a nice audience. So anyway, I'm going to go and get some sleep. As Adina Spark says, all that remains for me to say is go and watch the programme. And in the meantime, Ichawa Culla Solve, Slán go fóil agus tóg go bugé. Thanks a million. Bye bye. Good night.